I can't even put into words the impact that this book had on me. So for now, this is going to portray it. But today we're going to be talking about Heaven by Mieko Kawakami, a very short novel translated from Japanese into English. It is a literary fiction. So let's delve into this insane little book. I have written up a bunch of notes, so apologies if I have to look down at any point. But don't be fooled by the title of this book. Heaven, this book is literally the exact opposite of its title. This is not heaven, and that is for sure. But this story follows a little boy who's in middle school in Japan, and he's getting bullied for his lazy eye. And the story also follows another student called Kojima, who's also getting bullied alongside our narrator. And our narrator doesn't have a name. We never find out his name, so we're just going to call him our narrator because he doesn't have a name. And these two kids who are both suffering from bullying, they form a bond, a really strong, deep connection through writing letters to one another. They don't really have a space to talk in class. They can't really be seen with each other, or else the bullies might pick on them. So their only form of communication for the first little section of the book is writing letters and leaving it under each other's desks until eventually they plan to meet up at like the park and there these different destinations outside of school, but for now they're just communicating through letters. And they're both dealing with stuff, not just bullying at school, but they have stuff going on at home, and they're both dealing with their own stuff in their own ways. They both have different perspectives of the world and why things are happening to them, and that becomes way more evident throughout the whole book. So just a little disclaimer for this book. As I said, this book is not heaven. This tiny little novel packs a lot of heavy topics. Like, you'd think this is a short novel and surely it wouldn't have that much going on. It does. So I'd really recommend to look at any trigger warnings. This can get extremely graphic. There are some very graphic bullying scenes, very detailed. It can get very messy, so if you're triggered or prone to feeling uncomfortable with any heavy topics, please look into the trigger warnings before reading this book. So now I'm kind of going to dive into the philosophies that are quite profound in this book. Kawakami really follows the philosophy of bullying, especially in Japan, and she really challenges human morals and human ethics and why people do things and why people are so horrible. It really gets you thinking about all those things. And I think what I noticed in the first half of the book, it really emphasizes the power of writing as a form of communication, because as we know, they write each other books. And I think this is very evident in this story because these children do not have a voice. In school, they don't have the power to have their own voice. They can't really speak upon their feelings. They can't bring anything up. They're just trying to survive day to day. So I think this is really important, the fact that it shows writing as a really important form of communication between two people, and it kind of just goes back to the olden days where before social media even existed, people were only communicating through letters and you didn't know when you were going to receive your next one or if they were going to reply. But I think this really shows that these kids do not have a place to have a voice. And then she really goes into how bullying can look so different depending on the culture you're in. Obviously, bullying is bad in all realms, but specifically, she goes into bullying in Japanese culture. And I think bullying in this sort of graphic way these students are teaching each other can seem extremely like rare and quite shocking to more Western readers. Like, I'm not from Japan and this was quite intense for me, but for Mieko Kawakami, she's talking about her own culture. Like, this is normal in Japan, and I feel like this book portrays how normal it really is, because none of the other students in the class really bat an eye when these things are going on. I mean, I don't really think they have a place to, because these children are just trying to survive the day without getting tortured by these bullies. But I think this book really transports you into a Japanese classroom, and it really makes you feel how it feels to be in this environment, to be in amongst these kids. And what I think really stands out about this book with the terms of culture is it really shows the homogeneity of Japan. Like from many other cultures, it's very individualistic, but in Japan, everyone's trying to fit in. There's a certain ideal, there's a certain way you have to be, and all these kids in these books, all these students, you can tell, are all just trying to get by day to day and fit in, and they can't really be themselves, they can't express themselves. So it's very, you can see the homogeneity in the Japanese culture. So they don't really have a space to be themselves. They're solely just trying to get through each school day without being tortured, which is so devastating. But I think between the letters that are shared between the two Japanese kids, you can they have really, really philosophical conversations. I think from this tiny novel, you would not expect it to be so incredibly philosophical, but it really is. Um, so it really shows these philosophical conversations between these kids really remind you how confusing the world can really be, especially from such a young age. Like the world seems so daunting, so overwhelming, so different. You can't really have a grasp on anything. You don't know how anything works. Like just from such a young age, everything can seem so scary, and having to go through bullying this drastic at that young and trying to grow up and comprehend the world, like it really puts into perspective what these kids are going through. But these two kids, our narrator, who has no name, and Kojima, they both have two very different philosophical views on why they're being bullied. Kojima believes that she's being bullied for a reason. There's meaning to this. She believes that this is happening to her because she's going to learn a lesson, and she's going to come out the other side a stronger person, and she's going to look back in a couple years, and of course it's going to be uncomfortable. What she's going through is uncomfortable, but she's going to understand that these experiences have shaped her into the version she will be in the future, and that's her mindset. Whereas our narrator, he cannot figure out why he's being treated like this. He cannot figure out a reason. He can't wrap his head around why this is happening to him, why anyone would do this, why these kids are doing this, why someone would treat someone else this way. He can't figure out his reason. And Kojima keeps trying to push this onto him that it has this meaning and will come out the other side stronger, but he just can't, his mind just isn't working that way. So he's really struggling with the idea that he can't find his meaning or his purpose or understand why anything in his life is happening to him. And then, because our narrator is struggling so hard to understand why this is happening to him, there is a scene almost towards the end of the book, after a very graphic, intense bullying scene, where our narrator goes and confronts his bully on why he's doing this. And I feel like from the perspective of the reader, you would have expected a more positive outcome. Like, oh, this bully is like unsure with his life, and he's gonna apologize to our narrator, and he doesn't understand why he's doing it. He has issues going on at home, and this is why he's bullying it. Like I was full on expecting an apology from this bully to our narrator, but that did not happen at all, and this really threw me off guard. The bully fully stood on what he was doing. He was like, yeah, I'm bullying you and I don't care about your emotions. He was just purely apathetic towards our narrator. There was not a sense of remorse, not a sense of sympathy, nothing. Like he was just like, I don't have a meaning for you. I just like to bully you. And I think that just showed how people will just do whatever they want in this world. And sometimes they don't have a meaning, and as frustrating as it is being on the receiving end, you can't always receive the meaning and the understanding that you want from this other person, and people are just going to do whatever the hell they want. And I think the sort of lesson that was being portrayed through this scene is that you can't really control other people, you can't understand other people, but the only human being you are in control of is yourself. and therefore you have the power to control your reactions. And our narrator kind of realized this. Like, I thought maybe he'd absolutely lose it and he'd try to fight this boy and get his revenge, but he was kind of just like, okay, like, thanks for telling me, I guess. And then he just went on. He still didn't really understand, but he was able to control his reactions. And I think as human beings, a vital aspect of this life is being able to control our own emotions and own reactions, even when we don't understand why other people do theirs and act a certain way. So that is the big philosophical themes that I noticed in the book. And in terms of how this book left me, I would say Kawakami doesn't really leave a black and white answer or ending to this book. She kind of really leaves it up for the reader to interpret the meaning of this book. I don't even think I've left this book to marinate for months. I read this at the start of this year and it's now almost the end of the year and I'm only just being able to process it and analyze it. But I think one of the metaphors in this book is our narrator's lazy eye, because it's kind of like his bad eyesight is a metaphor because he can't see why this is happening. And I feel like this book leaves the reader with this blurry feeling, like they can't really figure out what is going on. And I think the true meaning is like hindsight. And it's like when we go through things and we go through difficult experiences, we can understand why it's happening in the moment, and we don't understand why we feel this way or why these certain people are interacting with us in a certain way. But if you look at it in hindsight, your future self, if you look back on scenarios now that you went through in the past, as uncomfortable as they were, and as much as you're like, I would hate to go through that again, you can kind of, there's usually just something that helps you realize that's why that happened. And there's something that came out of it, whether it helped you learn something new or develop a new mindset, or maybe it shaped you or took a different path in your life. Like, there's always just something that comes out of a horrible situation. And yeah, I think this book represents hindsight in that stage, as when we grow past these stages, our vision is no longer blurry and we grow past the haze that was in the current situation. So that is kind of what I got from Heaven by Mieko Kawakami. But as I said, there's not a black and white. The readers can interpret this book in so many different ways. And I love books that leave on that note for the readers to interpret different things. But please let me know if you've read this. I'd love to hear other people's interpretations. And again, if you do want to read this, check for trigger warnings. But yeah, I'll see you in the next video.